We are back.
That's embarrassing. I'm sorry about that. I did not realize I perhaps should have stuck
You've
with
been podcasting for a whole total of 40 minutes so far, so I think you're doing pretty darn good.
that is true. Thank you for your understanding, John.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my podcast. My name is Scott Horne, and this is yet another podcast on the internet. So, hello there, Mr. Internet. Welcome to the show. The show at this point is called either Mad Wicked Folly or Horne Show. I don't know. You come up with a name. My first guest, it was an honor and a privilege to have a conversation, meet this man. Now, man, I call a friend. This man was is an ex-submarine commander, a nuclear submarine commander. Have you ever commanded a nuclear sub? Neither have I. He's also a thricely published author, some incredible books on leadership, all in the same boat. I have the watch, and you have the watch. 3 very worthwhile books if you are interested in leadership. And who isn't in this day and age? We need leaders. He is also one of the last people keeping alive the fires of manufacturing in America. In this day and age, I think that's a very worthwhile pursuit. So please enjoy my conversation with a great man, Mr. John S. Rennie.
So, John, how did you go from military to the corporate world? And what was that transition like?
Yeah, it's funny. It was my dream from being a kid, even before high school, to become a submarine officer. So I had to work really hard through high school, college, to get into. It's a very demanding program to get into submarines and to become, a submarine officer. So, I achieved my childhood dream early in my life, serving on the USS Tennessee for 5 years. So I had. So what do you do when you achieve your life goal at 25 years old? What do you do next? And that was a bit of a challenge for me. So one of the things I saw in the military, especially the submarine community, is that it was tough on families. So many senior officers, senior enlisted, were divorced at least once, and sometimes twice, because what we did was very difficult. We would leave for 3 to 4 months at a time, no contact with the outside world, no email. Well, back then there was no email, there was no phone calls, so you disappeared for months on end, and so it was really hard to maintain a relationship with a wife, children, other family members. So it's really tough on families. I made 7 deployments during the end of the Cold War, so I was essentially 2 years of my life like disconnected from the world. So it's funny because some people talk to me about like movies or music that came out in the 90s. I don't really remember. I was I was deployed for most of the 90s, so don't remember much. But and so we made a decision. My wife and I was married at the time, made a decision to transition out of the military and go into the civilian world, and mostly just because of the the time it took and the distance apart and what have you. But what's interesting is, like many military people, I took a job in corporate. I took a job with a large global company that did engineering work, engineering product development with and made products for electric utilities. But I can tell you this: what was hard, Scott, is that I didn't have a vision and mission. I didn't have a drive anymore. I had achieved my dreams as a young man. So what do I do next? And so I really struggled for a long time to figure out what was my North Star, what was my guiding principle, what did I want to do with my life? And so it took me a while to finally figure that out again and find my mission in life. So and really, I always say my life has been in like 3 acts. My first act was, my dream of becoming a military officer on a submarine, and I did that. My second act was what I learned in the corporate world and what I became in the corporate world. And then I had a third act, which is kind of what I'm doing now. But so
Okay. That I've found the same thing. When I was younger, I had motivation and drive to achieve in the music industry. I've been mainly in entertainment, and then that all kind of I had to find something else. And
Hmm.
although I'm still in entertainment, I've branched out to other things, but that can really sap your motivation when you don't have direction.
It was really hard because the military was a brotherhood. We were tight. That we had a community. I had people who had my back. I had their back. And when you leave that community, and I know anyone that's listening to this that's a military veteran will know that it is hard to transition out and to get into the real world. I mean, I remember talking to my colleagues in the corporate world. I was like, why don't we get together in the evenings? Why don't we get together on weekends? How come everybody just kind of does their own thing? There's no community. We're not tight. And they're looking at me like I was crazy. I'm like, they're like, this is just a job. We all go home and do our own thing. We're just here to get a paycheck. And it was really hard for me to, having, had a mission and being driven my whole life up until that point. And I could tell you, it came later on in my career. It took me a while, but I remember the exact moment that I found my next mission in life, and it was a pretty important time. I was running 2 manufacturing plants at the time, so I started my career in R&D and in quality, and I kind of doing department duties. And then at 32 years old, I was given my first manufacturing plant. So I started running a manufacturing plant at 32. But and I was young, I was dumb, I was trying to figure it out. I'd never run a manufacturing plant before, and I did that job for about 3 years. Absolutely loved it, loved the people, but I didn't know if that's what I wanted to do with my life. And then my next job, I was promoted. I took over 2 manufacturing plants, one in Pennsylvania, one in Ohio. And it was one night in Ohio. I had gone up to this plant, and it was on third shift. I had to present to third shift kind of what was happening with the business. The business was losing money, and we were given an ultimatum by upper management that we had to turn it around or we were going to shut down the plant. So I had to present to these employees in the middle of the night, and a cold winter night up in Ohio, Ashtabula, Ohio, which is right on the lake. I had to tell these guys that if we didn't turn the plant around, we were going to shut it down. So it was a really hard message to deliver. I had to deliver it in the middle of the night. And I remember when I walked into this, it was a very old plant, very drafty. It was cold outside. It was a blizzard. Inside, it was just as cold. We had to go up to the second floor where there was a meeting room. I got there and I was exhausted. Middle of the night, I happened to see like a pot of coffee, and I'm like, well, great, there's at least something to kind of pick me up. So I find this old greasy pot of coffee. I pour in a styrofoam cup what is to be the worst cup of coffee I've ever had in my entire life. Up to that point, and even since, there's stuff floating in it. There's an oil sheen on top of the coffee. And I look down at this miserable cup of coffee, and I'm like, this is just as miserable as this night is. And the miserable is the message I have to deliver. And I sat in the back of the room. My quality manager was presenting. And I sat there looking at that coffee. And I realized at that point in time that I wanted to be no other place in the world but to be with these people, with these employees, and helping them turn this plant around. I realized my next mission in life was to turn around struggling manufacturing businesses. That became my mission from that point forward. At that point, I had 2 master's degree and military experience. I could have been like in some fancy office drinking, Starbucks coffee and lattes and, fancy whatever. But here I was in the middle of the night, a freezing cold night, drinking the worst miserable cup of coffee. But I realized that I was built for this, and this is what I wanted to do. And that was an important time in my life, because from that point forward, I was just obsessed with turning around manufacturing business. And a lot of it comes from my blue collar roots, came from a blue collar family. Really do believe in the working man, the working woman. And I really believe that they need a boss that's going to engage them and get their ideas and listen to them. And that's what I found my passion. That's what I did for my whole career in corporate after that. So I ran, all total, I ran 8 manufacturing plants around the country for corporate. before I started my own business 6 years ago. So yeah, so it was pretty much like I found my passion in the middle of the night with a crappy cup of coffee, and it's wild because you know is it the Mark Twain quote that says that the two most important days in your life is the day you were born and the day you realized why you were born. And I had that epiphany that night, and really that's what drove me the rest of my career in corporate. So it's just it's kind of a cool thing. But for those listening, it's like, what is your passion? What is your North Star? Why do you exist on this earth? What do you want to get done? And I think you got to find that. Otherwise you're kind of, you're adrift if you don't figure that out.
Absolutely. I got that from reading I Have the Watch, that you value people
Yes.
in a way that is unusual, in that it's refreshing that you value people so much that you've there's a section in there where you're talking about Richard Branson's model, where he puts the workers first, and then the customers, and then the shareholder. And that's
we have it backwards. In corporate, we typically have it backwards. Most bosses are running around trying to make the shareholders happy. And at the end of the day, they're never going to be happy, to be honest. But the way you're going to make them happy is to make the customers happy. The way you make customers happy is to make your employees happy. Build a company where people love to come to work and they love to contribute and they feel like they're making a difference, and they're going to make a difference for the customers, and they're going to make a difference for your business, and they're going to take you places that you can't go alone as a leader. You need a team of people around you, of highly qualified, talented individuals that are going to help you take that business to the next level. I mean, in all the successes I've had in my life, none of it is me. Absolutely none of it is me. It's always been just me figuring out how to fire up the people around me and get their ideas and listen to them. And the best ideas always come from the people that you would least expect. It's not the guy in the corner office that has the best ideas. Usually it's some quiet person sitting in a meeting listening, and I always say, you always listen to the quietest person in the room, because that person's typically listening and thinking while the rest of people are talking. And I always try to find that person, because sometimes they have this little nugget of wisdom that just changes everything. And so I think throughout my career, I've been trying to be careful to listen to that voice, listen to that person that has this crazy idea, and giving it, it's like a seed, like most times that seed falls on, dry ground, because most bosses don't care and they don't listen. To me, I try to create a fertile environment for these seeds that drop. It's like, all right, let's just see what this thing does. It's a crazy idea. I had an employee one time. We were trying to figure out how to take labor cost out of this product. And it wasn't that we were trying to figure out, we were mandated from corporate to figure out how to get the labor cost down. And this guy came up with the idea that we could set up a sub-assembly shop in Panama, down in the country of Panama. And I said to him, I was like, what do we know about Panama? He said, nothing. I said, have you ever been to Panama? I said, no. So why Panama? He's like, well, they've got this free trade zone, and we're bringing in products from China and India, and we could bring it there on one side of the country. We could do sub-assemblies, bring it out the other side of the country. And he had this whole plan. I was like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't believe it. But do me a favor. You and a couple of guys go down to Panama, figure it out, see if it makes sense, draw up a plan. It was just like one of these crazy ideas that I thought never could work. But I didn't give it that hard, dry ground. I gave it some fertile soil and let it just say, all right, let's just see if it grows. Let's see if that thing's got legs. And I think as bosses, we got to give those opportunities to people to let those crazy ideas maybe take root and see if they make sense.
You're in manufacturing. How is the manufacturing industry going currently, with the hikes in fuel and the challenges that you're facing in manufacturing?
Yeah. Well, so it's funny. When I started my business 6 years ago, life was, the world was pretty normal. The world was, like we have some of our vendors are in China, some are in India, some are in Mexico, so we source from all over the world. These components, we design our products, we source from all over the world. Well, this is the model that most manufacturing businesses were doing 6 years ago. Back then, China was a trading partner, right? They weren't the evil empire like they are today. So
Hmm.
we didn't have COVID. We didn't have Trump with, with putting in tariffs. We didn't have hyperinflation with the current administration. So life was pretty easy when we started the business. But ever since we started, it seems like the headwinds have come towards us. So I'll give you this real quick. We started our company, and in about 6 months after hanging our sign on the door, we got sued by a major manufacturer saying that trying to stop us, essentially. So they put a lawsuit on us, trying to shut us down, which turns out there wasn't any merit. We were able to get rid of that. But again, it was headwinds from day one. And then it was shortly after that we had Trump was elected, and it was the China, everything's bad in China. And we had partners in China, and we're like, oh, well, just, let's just, everything's fine, everything's good. And then he put the tariffs in place, which raised our cost of doing business. But still, we were able to kind of make money and grow. And even though with that, and then, and we all felt like Trump was going to remove those tariffs. He was just doing it as a negotiation ploy, but then he ran out of time. He was, he wasn't elected to a second term, and those tariffs stayed in place. And then the new president just left him. He didn't do anything about it. So you have these tariffs, and now we have COVID. And then COVID hits, and of course now China is the real enemy because they spread COVID. So you can imagine. I mean, like, we've had headwinds since day one, but yet, despite that, we still grow, we still get bigger, we're still serving our customers better than the big guys. And so, yeah, it's been a hard road for 6 years. I call it the get rich slow plan, where, so, like I see sometimes like these TikTok stars, making millions, or, these people who dance in front of Instagram and they get, like sponsors. And I'm like, I'm doing it the hard way. So manufacturing, those listening in or thinking about starting a manufacturing business, I encourage you not to. It's very difficult. So,
especially when it's all China seems to be nailing the manufacturing part of things. They seem to be doing it all for us.
Well, it's interesting because I studied. Now you have a British accent. So where are you from? Or
I'm actually Australian, but
Australian. Okay, all right. Sorry, I've mistaken that. So
yeah,
but I think if you think about the UK was at one point a manufacturing powerhouse, and then it just sort of disappeared, right? And I think the US is on that front too. So we used to be a manufacturing powerhouse, but we've outsourced that now. So there's only a few people like me that are still trying to make it in manufacturing in today's world. And I think that I actually studied one of my masters was in Cambridge in the UK. That's why I mentioned it, because I actually studied manufacturing engineering in the UK because they were trying to bring back manufacturing to the UK, and this was a program to do that. And I just happened to be an American student in that. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to think that manufacturing is going to ever come back in the U.S. I think it's, I almost feel like it's permanently gone, and there's just a few of us dinosaurs holding on to the last vestiges of it, because there's more money to be made, shaking your butt into Instagram, to be honest. So I'm not going to do that, though. By the way,
I think you'd be very good at it, though. I think you could be picked
I don't
up
think so.
overnight.
Right.
Yeah. I actually, to be honest, until I met you and we met on Twitter, I thought manufacturing was dead everywhere aside from China, aside from small little artistic groups or artisans and whatnot. But
right. If that's what you see, but it's funny because we do love, think about it in your life. You love something that's homemade. You love or something that's handcrafted, right? That it's not mass produced. It's something special where a craftsman made it, right? We love that. This flag behind me is hand carved by a friend of mine at a company called Sasquatch Flag Company. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's just like, we love things like this, right? But yet we don't encourage artisan, right? We want, this, people working with your hands, sweating, welding and building. These things are not like, people don't aspire to those things. Like, I'm an engineer, for example, and people don't aspire to be engineers anymore. I think we're, although maybe Elon Musk made it cool again, I guess. I don't know, but So we're just not cool people, you know? So
that opens up to a whole other. I was going to ask about. We'll get to Elon in a minute, but TikTok. Now, as I understand it, the algorithm for TikTok in China
yes.
rewards engineering and
Yes.
smart stuff, whereas in the West, it's encouraging shaking your butt.
It's 100%. You're exactly right with that. And, you know, I've made many trips to China. I've been there many times. You know, the thing I used to say in my trips to China, I haven't been there in a long time, probably 4 years, but I used to always say that they look like what America was in the 50s, you know, like post World War II, everything is booming, cranes everywhere, building construction, like, you know, just everything was hitting on all cylinders. That's what China felt like, you know, 10 years ago. And America seemed the other way. You know, you go into a Chinese airport and it is just beautiful. The architecture, everything is well run, organized, clean. And then you go through Newark, New Jersey, and you're just like, this crumbling infrastructure that is our country. And you can't, as an American, as a patriot, as someone who served my country, I get depressed. Like I want to be that country on the rise. I don't want to be the country on the decline. And I do feel like we are a country on decline overall. And this is not a political statement. It's not Joe Biden, Trump, or Bush, or all that. It's just that we generally are like, we peaked. You know, it's like me. It's like me peaking at 25 years old and then losing my way. I think as a country, we peaked, and I think we're losing our way, and we've got to sort of figure that out again.
Absolutely. I've been, I look into a lot of that stuff. I'm constantly watching and reading about the decline, the rise and falls of civilizations and the kings, and they're talking about there being essentially a handover of because America has led the world for so long. Now we're approaching the debt ceiling, all sorts of things. So it will be interesting seeing what's coming in the coming years, because I believe in the West as much as a lot of people don't anymore. A lot of people seem to be very against the West. I love it. I think we've done great things and we ought to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. We've done great things and we should keep going. But I just don't think that we have, I don't think we have a shared, you know, it's funny. One of the things I've always tried to do when I run my manufacturing business is bring unity. So to have a focused mission, a focused goal of the company that brings us all together, right? That we're all working to achieve one thing together. And that's something we lack in this country is a shared vision of the future. So we have, and that's what I think we struggle with. And part of the job of the leader, and I'm sorry, and again, I'm going to say both Republican and Democrat in this country have done it, is they've both gone their partisan extreme. Like, our vision is this. And the other guy's like, no, our vision is this. And it's like, far apart. And we don't have a vision that everybody can get on board with, right? It's either going to be, big government, high regulation, high taxes, single payer, medical program, or we're independent. We're rugged individualists, that go our own way, right? And there's like these two extremes, and we don't have a shared vision of the future that we can all get on board. Now, we've had presidents in our past that have done that, have brought everybody together.
Yeah.
But it seems like we become more diverse over time. Diverse is not the right word. More separated over time. Our beliefs have become more extreme. And so there is less center ground that I think, I'm talking as a guy that's 54 years old, and I've seen the changes over time. And I think that's my concern, is we don't have a shared vision of the future. We have the I'll say it, the Republican vision and then the Democratic vision. They're very far apart,
I can't remember who it was, but it was one of your founding fathers that said bipartisan politics is going to destroy the country, or is the worst thing for the.
Yeah. Ben Franklin said we either hang together or we hang separately,
Okay, yeah.
And so, it's this idea that we, united we stand, and we've forgotten that basic message, that we were founded on. So I'm not here just kind of, saying that there's no hope for the future. I just think that it takes leadership to bring unity. So you have to say, if you're president of the United States, you have to say, I'm president of the whole United States, not the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. I need to build unity for everyone for the future. And I think what I end up seeing is that every team's trying to score their own points. We're not trying to build something together,
I imagine political leadership and corporate leadership and leadership on a submarine must be very different entities, like different fields of law, because the submarine, you're all in the boat, you're all in the same boat. But in politics, people are running in all directions, have their own agendas. I've honestly, I don't think I've ever seen, I don't recall in my life seeing the world so divided as it is now.
I think you're right. And I think part of it is too, we think about this, well, I mean, I don't know your experiences, but I know when I was younger, we had like 3 news stations. We didn't have remote controls. You had ABC, NBC, CBS. That was it. Maybe on UHF you could pick up like a French Canadian station every once in a while, so you get a little bit of, whatever, something different. But my point is that we all saw the world kind of the same way. We had shared experiences. So we watched Walter Cronkite tell us the news, and everybody watched Walter Cronkite tell us the news. So now if you're left-leaning, you can go find a left-leaning news station to tell you about the day, how it went for your team. And then the right-leaning people can go to the right-leaning news stations and see, how did the day go for our team, And so, and you can spend your entire day, whether it's news, whether it's social media, whatever, you can put yourself in a world where you just have everything custom made for you. So you get your news, your information, your friends. And so what you see the world as is that everybody thinks my way, the right. And on the left, everyone thinks my way. And then when you experience someone that's different than you, you're like, what? You must be crazy, because nobody I know thinks that way. Right. And so I think we because of, I think we didn't have many choices, when I was growing up, you didn't have many choices, but now we have ultimate choices. Think about your coffee selection, compared to when I grow up. You got, Dunkin' Donuts. I grew up in New England, so we had Dunkin' Donuts coffee. You got black coffee, you got cream, or you got cream and sugar. That was it. That's how you got your coffee. Now you go to Starbucks and, I hear somebody ordering something and I'm like, I have no idea what you just said. It doesn't even make sense to me. I'll have a black coffee, So you know what I mean? We've gotten to the point where we can customize our experiences for everything, even the information that we see. And that's dangerous. And especially, I know Elon Musk is talking about, trying to bring free speech back to Twitter. And I think he's right, because, well, I guess my point is that, people say, well, we got to protect against misinformation and disinformation. We have to protect. I think if people are spouting in real life, right? If you're around a bunch of friends and you have one guy that's always BSing, he's telling stories that aren't true. We all recognize that, and we're just like, let that guy go, right? I mean, so if you have free speech, that sort of stuff works out. You don't want to have isolated speech where we have this group of people are on Parler or Truth or whatever. I don't even know what those are. And this group is on Twitter that's protected, and we never talk to each other. It just gets worse over time. And that's why I think we need to bring people together into one platform and let all the crazy ideas fly,
Yeah, we used to have a thing called the fairness doctrine in the media, which said that you had to represent both sides of an argument. If there was a
Mm.
political point to be made, you had to have someone from both sides. I think that when they got rid of that, that created this the bubbles. And social media, the thing I find interesting about social media, I can have interactions with people on social media which are very volatile. Then I see them in real life and we're like, hey, yeah, everything's cool.
Yes.
It's strange the way when you isolate it isolates one particular stream of your consciousness, and that can be that can create agitation in people. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I
uh,
think it's good that we meet. I mean, like having these kind of discussions is really important. I know I belong to some groups, and people I've met on Twitter are friends now that I've actually met them physically. We've gone and done things together. And I think once you get away from social media and you build true relationships and you see that there's depth in an individual, right? It's not just the words they tweet out. It's like, okay, well, this person thinks this way because they have had these kind of experiences, right? So you get to know somebody. You see a 3D version of the person versus like this 2D fake, 100, I don't know what it is, 140 characters. I don't know if it's what it is now, 240
Yeah.
characters, but it's this like fake 2D version. It's like paper versus 3D when you meet them in real life, and they have all this interesting experiences. And you tend to find with most people you have something in common with everyone, even if you politically are opposite ends of the spectrum.
Absolutely. And your empathy comes into play a lot more, where
Yeah.
it's a different, very different. I actually got on Getter a while ago when everyone started complaining about Twitter. I got on Getter, and somehow I'm getting a lot of followers, and a lot are involved in something called, and I wondered if you've heard of this, the new federal state of China. Have you heard?
Oh, no.
This is an interesting thing. It's actually, I've only looked into it a little bit, but it's started by Steve Bannon and someone else,
Ah,
and they're offering pushback against the CCCP. So yeah, good luck to them. I think they've got a big fight on their hands, but I think it is good that someone is offering pushback against a communist regime.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do think that we do. I mean, I think now we see China as the threat that they are, both economically and militarily. But I mean, they've been building this for decades, right? So it's hard to overcome what they've built. I mean, why is so much manufacturing in China? Well, because we started outsourcing it, 20, 30 years ago, and now they're really good at what we're not good at all, and that's not going to move. Some people say, oh, we got to bring manufacturing back to the US. Okay, well, they spent $40 million building a certain manufacturing process in China. You're not going to spend 40 million replicating that in the US and then staffing it with high cost labor.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. You're saying that the shareholders aren't going to expect the same level of profits that they've always expected. And that's not true. Every year they want more and more.
Yeah.
And this is why we've moved to China and to India and to, we used to joke around, in the manufacturing days back when I was in corporate, that ultimately there's going to be one village in Africa where everything is made, because we're going to be chasing that low cost labor so far till will there be one village in Africa, which is the lowest cost labor in the world. And then everything is made there,
That does seem to be the key. I have no idea how you'd overcome that with our quality of life, I guess, our quality of living. We're never going to do those jobs for the price that they will do in China. So
yeah, you're right. And so, but I think what ends up affecting that is, I think things change when you put in tariffs and you start closing trade-off. I think when the price of transportation gets so crazy like it is today, then people say, well, let's just go back to making it here, So the things, the high price of transportation, the countries not getting along like Russia and the US now, or, again, one point we were, I'm a Cold War guy. So at one point the Soviet Union was the evil empire. Then we became friends.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know if you remember, even Hillary Clinton gave like her equivalent over in Russia, like a button, like, hey, we got a button, it was like a joke. We're friends now, it was like over, the Cold War is over. We're friends now. Now with Ukraine, we're enemies again, supposedly. So as we build these tensions up, and now we have tension with China, right? China and Russia. So now it's like, well, we're not going to trade oil with Russia. We're not going to trade grains and things like that. They're, and fertilizers. They're the bad guys. And now same thing with China. Oh, we're going to put tariffs in place. We're going to break that connection. And so that's when these kind of things happen, and then transportation costs go through the roof. Then you start saying, okay, well, maybe we'll figure out how to make it in North Carolina, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to make it in North Carolina. So,
well, yeah, it's we've all heard the necessity being the mother of invention.
It is, yeah.
I believe it will happen. I believe we'll find ways around these things purely because we have to. I think that's what it's going to come down to. As I say, I'm not sure about the direction the world is going in at the moment, but I have hope. I tend to say I'm an optimistic cynic.
Yeah, that's me. I agree with that. That's probably where I sit. I mean, I'm an optimist, but I also, I live in a realistic world, like where, okay, well, this is what I see today. I hope that we could get together. We could, have a common view for the world and for our country. But, realistically, I don't see it happening in the near future,
How was your journey into podcasting? Did you find it? I mean, everything is fairly straightforward once you learn the tech and a few little. I mean, I came from audio engineering, so the audio kind of side of things, but video has been a bit of a learning curve, and broadcasting at the same time. How did you find that?
Well, so I have zero experience with audio, zero experience with video. But, again, you were talking about earlier, necessity is the mother of invention. And I did this out of necessity because my third stage in life has been to share the wisdom and the knowledge I learned over all these years leading people. And I did it through writing. I've been writing articles for years. And one of the things I noticed is that people don't read anymore. So these articles, so these articles that I was writing, on different websites, I noticed that just the readership dropped off tremendously. And then I did notice that more and more people were engaged in, podcasts where they could be mowing the yard or driving to work or even sitting in the office, or like even in my factory, some of the guys listen to podcasts on the shop floor, while they're going through their day. So I realized that there's a power in audio in that you could be doing something else, right? And still getting this kind of wisdom and knowledge. So for me, it was like, 54, I'm an old guy, I'm like, all right, well, I guess, well, the thing I was encouraged by is the number one show in the country is, in the world, I think it is Joe Rogan, right? And Joe Rogan is younger than me, actually, by about 6 months. So I figured, well, Joe's an old guy and he figured this thing out. Well, maybe I can figure this thing out too. And, when you start out, you're like, you don't like to hear your voice. You listen to a recording, you're like, that sounds terrible. Like who's going to listen to this? But you just keep going and you keep doing it. And, I've got, I think 140 some odd episodes now we've done. I've interviewed, most of those are interviews. So probably 120, 130 leaders, people, authors of books, just, military leaders. I just interviewed a CIA officer this morning. I've had FBI guys, I've just interviewed all these amazing people and created all this content. And I've actually found, maybe we shouldn't say this out loud, but it's easier than writing an article. Talking is easy, writing is hard. So
It is,
I actually
yeah.
found that I loved it. So and it grew. The podcast I run is called Deep Leadership, and now we're a top 5% podcast in the world, not just for our genre, but for overall podcasting. So in 2.9 million podcasts in the world, we're in that top 5% category globally. In fact, I have a virtual assistant that helps me with some of the marketing of my books and things. And she said, "Oh, we're number 15 overall all podcast in Turkey. We're number 15." I don't know what that means. I didn't even know people in Turkey could understand English, but I'm number 15 in Turkey. So I'm huge in Turkey. So, but the point is just like, it's like me. What's that?
That's something to be proud of.
I
Definitely.
guess. I've never been to Turkey. But my point is that, and since I've started, I haven't invested in any equipment. Maybe I've gotten some software in things, but I still have the same microphone I bought when I started. I still have the same computer. It's just, but my podcasts are much better produced than when they started, and now I have sponsorships and things. So yeah, it's been, everyone's an amateur when you get started, no matter what it is you're doing, and the more reps you put in, the more time you spend doing the work, you get better at it, and I love this. There was an expression by, I can't remember who said it, but he was I guess the founder of LinkedIn. I can't remember his name, but he said, "If you're not embarrassed by the first iteration of your product, you're moving too slow." And I love that. And I always think about that, in that, if you listen to Joe Rogan's early podcast, the first 100, they are terrible. And now as an audio engineer, you would listen to them and say, "Dude, all you got to do is turn the gain down on your microphone and it would be a great recording."
Yeah.
But like simple things, he didn't know that. He was just a dumb guy with and they were talking about back then. Well, you have to listen in. I won't talk about what they're talking about, but they were crazy. And who knew that was going to be the most prominent podcast in the world now in 2022? It's wild. It's wild to think of that. And so the other thing is to, if anyone who's starting podcasting or anyone starting anything, is that you're going to suck at it for a long time until you figure it out, until you figure out your voice, your niche, your audience, why people come to you versus others. And you just have to stay in the fight long enough until you figure all that stuff out. So I'm at the point now where I know I'm comfortable with who my audience is, the kind of guests that I bring on, and I love what I do. But it took a while to kind of get into my groove and figure it out, So now I don't even look for guests. They come to me, and I normally say no. My first answer to most guests is no, because unless I'm interested in what you got to talk about, I don't really care, So, but I'm looking for people who have done some really cool things in their lives and learned some really unique lessons and all that involve people and leading people. So I'm looking for that. You show me something, you've done something interesting in your life. I don't really want to listen to some of these guys are like .com. I say .com millionaires. That sounds like something from the 90s, but they're like, they start these e-businesses and, they don't have any employees. They've outsourced them all to India. And that's not leadership. It's just figuring out a way to make money. So anyways, those guys bore me. So
That's I was listening to a different podcast that you did last night. I can't remember the name of it, but you were talking about how the coach being on the side, I think it was on a tennis court, if they're tense, that made me think I've been doing live comedy for about 8 years now.
Oh, wow.
And if you're on stage, that's a classic example of when you start, you're terrible. It's just, you really.
Oh, in comedy, especially. Yeah.
But when you're on stage, if you're tense, the crowd is tense.
Yes.
When you learn to just own the stage and you get up there and you just relax, the crowd is relaxed with you. We are very, as animals, as a herd, we're very 100%. Like, why is that guy tense? If he's tense, what can he see that I can't?
Yes, it's so true. It's so true. I mean, I always say, I was just talking to somebody, my podcast guest, I was asking her about how to pronounce her name. Her parents are from India. and I want to make sure I pronounced her first name right. And I said to her, I said, well, if I don't get it right, I'm just going to say it quick and I'm going to be confident about it. And she just laughed because that's how I've led for years. It's like, if I don't know something, I'm going to go quick and just look confident.
Yeah.
And we'll figure it out later. But I think you're right. I think comedy's that way too. And anytime you're in like a leadership role where a lot of eyes are on you, like people are looking, is he weak? Is she going to be there for us when things get bad? They're looking for cues all the time. Like, can I trust this person? And I think you're right. We're very we like to think we're higher order. We're very pretty much animal instincts, and it's that that what they call the lizard brain that does kind of run us pretty much. And it's interesting. I listened to a podcast. You probably know it. It's called Kill Tony. And it's a show where they pull a name from a hat and just have anybody come up and do 1 minute of comedy, and it's just interesting. You can hear nervousness, and then you can see the crowd just turn right off, and then another person will come up and be confident, even if they're not that funny. Their confidence makes people they have a good time and they laugh at the stuff, even though it's really not all that funny. Just the confidence they bring to the room. So it's really interesting that you say that.
It is really interesting with comedy. The audience become your instrument. You kind of learn to play the room.
Yeah.
And so much. The longer I did it, when I had times where I just absolutely owned the stage, where I would stand on stage for a couple of minutes without saying anything, just looking at the audience, but they were looking back at me, seeing that I was perfectly comfortable, and I was expecting something from them. I was like, all right, well, what are you going to give me? And that created a bond between us that was like, all right, we're doing something together here. Together. It's interesting. I've just started, I am starting shortly doing a radio show here. I've just moved to this town about 6 months ago, so I'm starting a radio show, and it's so strange being in a room on your own. You're not even talking to, there's no other person to bounce off.
Oh yeah.
So you have to imagine the other people there. It's a real challenge, but
I know. So I do the intros to my show. I do separate. So in other words, I'll do an interview, and that'll be. So I do like an intro. I'll do I'll do a vocal intro, and then I'll have intro music, and then I'll have my guest, right? So, but that first section, I always do like just myself and a microphone, in my computer. But you're right. It's weird because I take my cues off other people when I publicly speak, when I talk to employees. I'm always taking cues. And when you don't have those cues and you're just talking into a microphone, or a camera, it is harder for me, at least. You have to definitely imagine that there's someone on the other line or the other side nodding to your, what you're saying, and, and understanding what you're talking about. But now I'm used to it. But I remember when I first started recording those intros, I would stop it. I'd re-record. I'm like, oh, it sounds terrible. I don't know. Then I got to the point where like, I'm talking to somebody in their car. I'm imagining that I'm talking to somebody driving to work in the morning. And then it just sort of like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Then it flowed better, flowed better. I don't know if that's the right word.
No, that's right. That's very useful. I hadn't thought of it that way. I tend to, I guess, what I visualize, and it is important what you visualize. So I'm often visualizing that I'm talking to an audience, which I'm not. On radio, podcast, you're talking to, you're right. You're talking to someone that's doing something else. So you're
right. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, because I'll even say things like that. Oh, I'll put a link in the show notes. You're busy now, type of thing. Because I'm kind of empathizing with them not sitting at their computer with a pen and paper, right? So yeah. You go back and look at the show notes. We'll put that in the show. Don't bother with it right now. You got better things to do than stop the show and write this down.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So what do you think of this Elon Musk character? this whippersnapper, this new starter? Now, what do you think of
Yeah.
Elon? Do you think he's going to buy Twitter? Do you think Tesla's going to keep?
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, I think it's cool that we have someone like that in our world, someone that we can look to that's doing big things, that's thinking big thoughts and taking risks and doing things that are big, because I think we're missing that in the world, right? So like our space program died. I mean, I don't know if you remember that, but Obama was in office, and the space shuttles were retired, and we're sending astronauts to the space station, from Russia. And there's like a national sense of like, we kind of suck, hey, do we suck? We suck. Yeah. It's just like, it's sort of like a bit of a national pride that we can put a man into space. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's too expensive. Maybe we shouldn't be doing it, but there was always a national pride. Kennedy put a man on the moon, right? He challenged the country. We answered that challenge, right? I think a nation is coalesces around big things, and big ideas. So with him coming around and watching these SpaceX flights, I don't know about you, but like I'm as an older guy and someone that's, a math, science, engineering kind of guy, I'm looking at the way these space vessels operate, the spacesuits that they're wearing, everything is just aesthetically perfect. They're doing things you cannot believe that is even possible. And you're just like, there's like even though I have no association with Elon or SpaceX or anything, I don't have a dog in the fight, but you feel a sense of pride that we, the human race, we can do something this cool,
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think it's really neat, and it inspires the next generation. There's going to be 100 other Elon Musk that come out of this. They see someone that thought something was possible and was able to do it, right? And I think, look at electric cars. I mean, I've been around long enough where, Jimmy Carter was saying, we got to go for electric cars because we have an oil, embargo. We have this oil crisis. All right, well, they kind of sucked back then, and really they've sucked for a long time until now. They're kind of like cool, like, oh, we figured, and a lot of it is the technology is caught up. I mean, I want to make that argument, and then the infrastructure has been built up, but it's now cool to have an electric car, and they're pretty awesome. A Tesla, what is it, the Plaid, that's got the fastest production car in the world. That's kind of cool. I wouldn't mind owning one of those things, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's great that we have a hero like this. But it's funny, my son and I have two older sons. They're no longer living in our house. They're both grown. But we were talking about how Elon Musk is like he's like a modern day Iron Man, right? He's like a Tony Stark. He's like, this is Tony Stark. We're seeing this in real life. Like he's doing all these wild things. He's wealthy, he's quirky, and he's doing all these amazing things. So I love to watch him and see what he's doing. And I think he's also, I think he just likes to, he's not controversial, but I just think he likes to just shake things up and say funny things just to see how people react. And I like that. So I love just him throwing something out, he's not even that serious sometimes. He just wants to see what people will do. And for him to buy Twitter is just like, let's just see what happens. Here's $40 billion. Let's see what happens, kind of thing. It's just like, you imagine him not spending a lot of time thinking about how important a decision it is, spending $40 billion. He's like, no, I'd like to see it better. I'm going to buy it. Yeah. And it's just wild. You know what I mean? It's just something we haven't seen in our time. And I think he's right with a lot of things with respect to, we talked about earlier, free speech online. And, there shouldn't be, sheriffs one side or the other saying what's right and what's wrong in terms of speech. And I've always been bothered that the amount of people that I've seen get, canceled over the years is just, it's a little disturbing. I remember when Alex Jones got canceled, right? When he got canceled, everybody went, yeah, well, he probably shouldn't have said that, Everybody said, Alex Jones should have been canceled, right? But then I always thought in the back of my head, like, all right, he shouldn't have said some of those things. Maybe that makes sense. but where does it stop? I remember thinking that first time, because I think he was victim number one of people getting canceled. And I kept thinking to myself, well, where does it stop? Where's the slope where we say you're okay? And there's no recourse, by the way, if you get canceled. There's no coming back from it. You're canceled for life, And I think we've got to think differently about it. I think Elon thinks differently about it. So it'll be fun to see what happens. I don't have a dog in the fight. I stay away from controversy on my social media because I want to sell books. I'll be honest.
No, I've noticed that, and I was going to say I need to tighten up my socials. I've never been good at social media. I will see something, I'll go. So I need to like start a new Twitter for this and all those kinds of things. But
yeah, well, I think to be honest with you, I became apolitical during the Trump-Hillary battle. At that point, I said like, oh, we've lost our minds. I'm done. I literally said, I'm done with politics. I am not one side or the other. I am completely, utterly done with politics. And then, of course, then a friend of mine ran for U.S. Senate, and I was like, all right, I got to support you, but I'm done with politics. So, but generally, I don't care. I mean, I really don't. It seems like you could really get. It's always, oh, look at one side wins, the other side loses, and it's look at my team, look at your team. I get so tired of that. And I think there's more important things we've got to get done in the country than argue about, people's position on what have you. So
yeah, there was a comedian, I can't recall his name, but he did a bit about where he was saying he was on a plane and he was really nervous about flying. He's a nervous flyer. And so he decided to watch TV. And the thing that they had on at the time was the 2016 presidential debates. After listening to that for 15 minutes, he was totally fine with the plane crashing.
Yeah, no, really. If it crashes, I think it's better off for all of us.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I was just listening to some comedians talking about flying, and they were saying that, like one guy said, I get nervous when I turn on. I want to watch the news, but I don't want the guy next to me thinking, oh, he's watching Fox News, he's a right winger. Oh, he's watching CNN. Oh, he's you know what I mean? He's like, so what I do is, he goes, I flip between the two, just so they think I'm normal.
Yeah.
Seriously? Is this what we've become to? That what news you watch tells you like what kind of person you are? I guess I don't know.
Yeah, it's an insane. It really is the bubble of all that. And what you were saying about Alex Jones getting the amount of people that have been cancelled, and once that voice is removed from the conversation, it drives that voice into a dark corner where people who seek that voice are still going to find that voice.
They do. Yeah, they do. 100%.
I mean,
yeah.
So I don't think it really serves the purpose they believe it does. And I always think it's better to have a conversation than a monologue, because a monologue you're only getting, But I've listened to Alex Jones quite a bit. I find him very entertaining and informative. You've just
that's the thing. He's entertaining, right? He's entertaining. He's bombastic. He's controversial. I mean, he's gone off the rails often, but he's also been right on some things that are like, oh shoot, so can a voice like that exist in our world today, where sometimes you're really wrong? I think so. I mean, I'm not saying Alex Jones, but I think in general, I don't care who you are. If you're a left-leaning person and you I don't know, whatever your crazy idea might be, I think you should have a voice. And I think
absolutely
people, and it has to be in a public forum. And if you're crazy, people are going to go, that dude's crazy, right? Or if everyone, if you're 99% right all the time, then people are like, okay, he's crazy, but there's something with that person,
Yeah.
And so I think people will figure you out. We don't need to have, we don't have to have, people monitoring misinformation or disinformation. We can figure it out ourselves. We can tell when someone's pulling, trying to pull our leg.
It only takes being fooled once or twice on Twitter or Facebook or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You get sucked and you get fooled to make you go, all right, let's take a bit of a calm look at the. I go through my Twitter now and I see things that, you know, when I first got on Twitter 18 months ago, I would have been like, that's outrageous. And now I'm just like, is this real? Let's check it out, you know?
Yes. Yeah. No, 100%. I do that all the time. Like I'll see something. I'm like, that can't be right. And I'll actually Google it. And then sometimes you're like, that seems right. Then I'll go, I'm like, let me go it. And then you get a whole different search result. Like, oh shoot, this thing is really true. Or this thing is, okay, it's fake. All right, great. You know, but I think people are quick to react to a lot of like, you know, somebody put a meme up there with claiming something and everyone's like, oh, I can't believe that Clinton did that or whatever, you know, and it's like, no, he didn't do that. That's actually fake. You know, that was, you know, a lot of things are fake. And if it's too crazy to be true, it probably isn't true, you know?
Yeah. They're getting so good with the deep fakes and the editing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But here's the thing that gets me, Scott, and I don't know how you feel about this, but there are aliens and UFOs that are flying around our country, and our government just said, yeah, there's aliens and UFOs flying around. And we don't care. It was no big deal. Like I grew up where, you know, in the 70s when like, you know, like, oh, like the UFO thing. There used to be a program on TV called Project Blue Book, and it was, you know, and it talked about the stories of the Air Force tracking down, you know, was it a hoax? Was it real? And I remember being a kid like, oh, is this real? Is this a hoax? You know, and you know, thinking like, oh, it's gotta be aliens out there, you know. And you know, as you grow, you're like, oh, okay, everybody who believes in aliens are crazy. It's all right, never mind. It was childhood stuff, right? And the government just comes out and says, oh, yeah, there's UFOs. We don't know what they are. They're flying around. And you're just like, can we stop everything and talk about that? Can we stop talking about COVID for a second? There's aliens flying around. Like I want to scream like, guys, hey, there's things. Nobody cares. Nobody cares there was UFOs.
They really slid that one in there, didn't they? Like just
completely.
Now's the time. Let's just. By the way, hey, everyone, stay inside. By the way, there's UFOs. But yeah,
right. So, should that not be the biggest news of the year? But
that should be something that should be a public discussion. But yeah, it's amazing that is you're still considered a kook to talk about UFOs and whatnot.
Right. So I don't talk about UFOs, but I do think it's funny when the government says, "Oh yeah, there's UFOs," and you were just like, "I'm like, did you guys hear that?" Yeah. You're supposed to. They take notice here.
They even changed the name of them. They're not UFOs anymore. They're I can't remember what they're called now, but they changed the name. It's very slick. I give props to them for, you know, being like, well, we don't call them that anymore. They're very slick.
Well, it's interesting. I did one of these Ask Me Anything on Reddit. You know, I'm not a big Reddit guy. I do have a Reddit account, but I had a guy that wanted me to do an Ask Me Anything. And so, you know, hey, I'm a former nuclear submariner, written a bunch of books, Ask Me Anything kind of thing. So I spent, I don't know, 4 hours on Reddit answering questions, and like 50% of them were about aliens and UFOs. And I'm like, okay, these people are crazy in Reddit.
Yeah.
So kind of, because they're like, how many UFOs do you see as a submariner? I'm like, 0. And then like, well, okay, what's the truth? You can tell us. I'm like, none. Like, why are you asking about aliens? I'm under the water.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. So
it is you are in, I don't know, it's not outer space, it's kind of inner space when you're under the water. It is
inner space, yeah. I mean, there is nothing more like a spaceship than a submarine in the ocean. I mean, so you can't open a door, you know, you can't, you know, I mean, just like a spacecraft, right? You have to get to the surface, and, you know, spacecraft has to get to Earth to be able to get someplace safe. But you're in something that you can't get out of. You know, you're locked in that for months at a time, just like the guys on the space station. So it's very similar. Yeah.
I was curious about that, actually. What instruments do you have on a submarine to scan the outside? Is it just radar, or do you have LiDAR? And
no, we're using passive sonar. So we're listening at all times. So we don't use active. We have active sonar. We don't use it because it gives away our position. So we're listening in at all times. So we're listening to all the noises in the ocean. So we can hear ships, we can hear submarines, we can hear we call them biologics. You can hear whales and shrimp and dolphins and you name it, we can hear it. And yeah. So it's all listening. And so like when I'd stand watch, I'd stand watch, say on the mid watch. So that would be midnight to 6 a.m. We had speakers on up in the control center, like that were directed at different hydrophones. So I'd turn on like one of the hydrophones on the top of the submarine. I just listen into so I could actually hear what was going on in the ocean while I stood my watch. And so it's bubbles, it's shrimp. You can hear whale noises and all sorts of. The ocean is a noisy place, as it turns out. I had no idea until I, spent 2 years of my life under the ocean. It's very noisy, yeah. And so we use that to our advantage. We'll hide in noisy areas. We'll hide where there's a lot of shrimp and noise, and so that's kind of what.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, it's all a game of stealth. It's all a game of hide and seek, is what we do. So. Yeah.
A blind man on a submarine would be a huge asset, really. They're used to.
Yeah, if you had sensory, if you had, augmented hearing because you didn't have your vision, you would absolutely be effective as a submariner. Yeah, we have. I write about it in. I think it was my second book. Yeah, my second book. There's this thing that happens with very large container ships. Is they. So if you have a large container ship coming directly at you, you're listening. So you don't have any active sonar, you're just listening. And so what these big freighters have is they have what's called a bulbous bow, a very large bow, and their engine is in the back. So we listen for engine noises and propeller noises. Well, if that large freighter is coming right at you, that bulbous bow will mask the noise. It'll hide the noise. So we actually can't hear a very large, like, super tanker coming right at us. And I had it in one case, a super tanker almost went directly overhead one time because I couldn't hear it until the last minute. And then I actually heard it over the hydrophone. I actually heard the propeller. Boom, 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 boom. I'm like, what is that? And it came right overhead. It was like a ghost ship. But it was all because that bulbous bow was masking the engine noise until the last minute when it went overhead. Yeah, so.
That's amazing. I just got the signal again.
I see that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, 2 more questions I've got for you. What is the food like on a submarine?
Oh, it's fantastic. So this is a little bit surprising when I tell people that, is that, we didn't have much going for us as submariners, right? No alcohol, no women, no sunlight, and no really good pizza, right? So you're for 3 months at a time. So what they do is they feed us fairly decent food, really good food. Now we would run out of like fresh fruits and vegetables and milk and things like that. But one of the things that's really interesting is that we baked bread. So, you couldn't carry bread. So you baked fresh bread every night on the mid-watch. So every night on the mid-watch, as I was standing off the deck, the galley is actually below the control room, and you would smell the smell of fresh baked bread every night. I mean, how awesome is fresh baked bread? And so we actually ate very well. We actually, a lot of the guys got fat on board because we were fairly sedentary in our lifestyle because, we didn't walk very far, and we,
Okay.
560 feet, in either direction. That's all you had.
That's it.
So a lot of guys gain weight on board because the food was good, and we didn't have a very highly active lifestyle. So food was excellent.
Oh, that's good to know. I'm glad.
Yeah.
The final question: have you ever considered writing fiction?
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Mitchell Bowling, just wrote his first fictional book after writing 2 leadership books, and it's amazing. It's a great book. It's called Persian Tomcats, and it's awesome. He's done a really good job, and so he's kind of sparked my interest. I don't know. I mean, it's a lot different writing fiction than it is nonfiction, but I think it might be fun because you don't have to worry about it being accurate or truthful. It's your own story. So I think that there's something that's attractive about that. But no, I haven't, not pen to paper yet. I think I'm sticking with my genre of, leadership. And one of the things I've been thinking about lately is here's a problem I see is that a lot of people that read my books or follow me and what I do, they're already good leaders, and so they're learning how to be better leaders, and that's great. I'm okay with that. But how do you reach the leaders, the bosses out there that suck, which are about 60 to 70% of bosses are terrible. And those people don't know they're terrible, and they're not seeking to get themselves or to become better. So I've been thinking lately about how to reach these people more, and how do I create a way to reach the people that are not likely to read a book or listen to a podcast about leadership. So that's kind of my next mission in life, is to figure out how to better reach the, it's not the people that are well that need the doctor. It's the people that are sick that need the doctor. And I'm trying to figure out how to get to the sick people, the people that need to hear the message. So I've got some things I'm working on with that respect. So one of the ways is basically, having people identify, finding bosses that are jerks. And what can we do about that? How can you lead? So if you have a boss that's a jerk, what can you do about it? So my next book might actually be talking about what to do if you're working for a boss that sucks and a boss that's a jerk. How can you lead up? What are the subtle ways that you can make your situation a lot better? Say you're in a situation where you can't get out of it, right? You're not able to move around the country. You're not able to, you've got 20 years in, you want to get your retirement. There's a lot of reasons why people don't leave jobs. How can you make it better for yourself? And I think that's my next book, is going to be, how can you lead your boss if you have a terrible boss? How can you lead them better to become better? And so that's the kind of what my passion is right now. I've been thinking a lot about lately.
Yeah, that was actually another question. I think I mentioned that too. I think that would be a very worthwhile book. I think a lot of people are probably in that situation. Actually, you seem to take a very different approach to like the one book I recall on leadership, reading on leadership, was Machiavelli's The Prince.
Yeah.
And he said it's better to be feared than loved.
Yeah.
You seem to have flipped that entirely. I mean, he was from a very different era. But
I think I don't want to be loved. I want people to love themselves. I want them to love what they do, and I want them to feel like they're achieving their dreams. And I don't want them to love me. I want them to love what they're doing. I want them to come into work and enjoy what they do.
yeah,
And I think that's my passion. I don't want the leadership to center around me. My organization, even though I own it, I run it, it doesn't center on me. It centers on them. I want them to be able to bring their best to work and achieve all the things they want in their career. And I'm there to facilitate making that happen. But it's not about, I don't want to be loved or respected. I want to be out of the way. I want to unleash the passions of my employees, so they're out there achieving their goals and doing the things that make them happy in life.
okay.
If I can do that, then I feel like I've achieved what I want to do as a leader. I want the company goals to become the employees' goals. I want them to believe in the goals, not me telling them they have to achieve it. It's like we can do it. It comes from below, not from above. And it's hard to do. It's a little bit subtle, but I don't want to be respected or loved or feared. I just want to be out of the way.
Okay. Well,
It's
yeah,
different.
that's very different to it. Yeah. I wondered if there is an element of like, I was going to ask, when do you raise your voice? Like, are there situations where you need to like step in and say, okay, we're going off track here?
Oh yeah.
To it.
Yeah.
And how do you approach that? Like,
Oh, I love it. I mean, yes, and leaders bring your emotions to work. I really truly believe in it. But if you fly off the handle on every issue, then then it's not very impactful. But when you fly off the handle with something that is completely unacceptable in this environment, like somebody not being treated with respect, or somebody cheating, or someone doing something that's dishonest, and you come out with righteous indignation and very upset, then everyone stops and like, oh shoot, Rennie's pissed, because it's very rare. And when you bring it, everyone's like, oh shoot, we stepped over. So that person stepped over the line. That'll never happen again. And again, use your emotions absolutely at work, but use them sparingly. Don't be upset about every little issue that comes your way, because believe me, if you're an entrepreneur, there's going to be a lot of issues, and you're going to die of a heart attack if you do that. So I'm pretty level-headed, but you do something that violates a distinct principle in how we operate the company, then you're going to hear me being very angry. Yeah. So I will give you an example. One of my customers, very large customer, maybe I'll mention their name. General Electric was one of my customers, and they played games with me with paying. They were a large, whatever, $140 billion company. I was a small $2 million company, and they refused to pay their bills. Every month they would be like, oh, we got a new system we're putting in, or, oh, we didn't get your invoice. And it was just basically lying to me. And, after 6 months, 8 months of that, I kind of lost it on them, and I fired them as a customer.
Really?
Because I don't want you to be lying. And it was $1 million customer, and I fired them, and we're done with them. But the point is that don't lie to me. Don't drag, I'm not stupid. I know what's happening here. You're using my cash to run your business.
Yeah.
I'm a little company and you're a big company. We're not playing that game. You're being dishonest, and I don't want to do business with someone who's dishonest.
Yeah, well, I respect that. Walking away from that, I think that's necessary to be able to do that, to run your company effectively, clearly.
Yeah, and my employees loved it. I said, I'm walking away from $1 million worth of business, and they said, good, they suck.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, we're gone. So.
That's brilliant. One more thing, minute 10 left. Any movies that really sum up the submarine experience?
I think out of all the movies, I think I like the one that's more accurate than others is Crimson Tide from an accuracy standpoint. But from a classic, you got to go with The Hunt for Red October. I absolutely love that. My favorite movie. So yeah, but it's not very realistic, but it's a great movie.
Okay. What about Das Boot? Have you seen the German?
Yes, it's a depressing movie.
It's horrific, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah.
I don't imagine you would have watched that and gone, that's what I want to do.
No, exactly. No, it's not very motivating. Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you so much for doing this, John. It's been an absolute privilege and an honor. Good luck with everything you're doing in the future, and I hope we will do this again.
Thank you very much. I had a lot of fun.